Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something, well, pretty fundamental, isn't it?
Absolutely, that deep human thing.
Yeah, that urge to learn from the past, not just, to survive, but so the people who come after us can really, truly flourish.
It's deep-seated.
Our source today is called AI Analysis of Intergenerational Preparation. It's described as an AI-informed philosophical look at exactly this drive.
So using AI to look at this very human thing, interesting angle.
Right. So your mission with us today, and hey, you're here, so you're already on board, is to get a quick but pretty solid grasp on how societies, historically and right now, are trying to avoid messing things up like we have before.
For the sake of the next generations.
Exactly. For them.
Yeah.
You think about that basic desire we all have for our kids, their kids, to live, full, happy, healthy lives, be good people, good citizens.
It's almost primal, that feeling.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We can kick off with this really interesting idea from the source, the Intergenerational Compact.
This sort of unspoken agreement?
Yeah, largely unspoken, linking generations together, all aiming for something better down the line.
And what hits you straight away is, well, how fundamental this tendency is. The source really highlights that it's a dynamic thing. Yes, passing on knowledge, sure.
The facts and figures.
Right. But just as important is actively learning from our own, individual mistakes and also our collective ones, our history.
So it's not just downloading data.
No, it's about cultivating wisdom, maybe? That sounds a bit grand, but you know what I mean.
I do. That's the core of it, isn't it?
That's what we're diving into.
Okay. And this knowledge transfer aspect, the nuts and bolts of passing on skills, traditions, values, all that stuff, it's obviously crucial for culture, for identity.
Absolutely key. The source points to indigenous communities and tech traditional ecological knowledge.
Yes, second.
It's such a powerful real-world example. It's not just information, it's a whole way of seeing and being in the world. Passed down.
It really shows that qualitative side the source talks about, that hope that future generations will kind of do everything right.
Yeah, but here's the catch, right? What is right and what counts as a mistake?
It changes.
It totally changes. It's shaped by culture, by history. The source mentions how colonization just completely upended traditional Native American gender roles.
A huge disruption of what was considered right.
Exactly. Or even something we might think is universal, like how much we value certain kinds of work. That can be really different between generations.
Which just hammers home that, effective learning isn't passive. You can't just accept what you're told.
You've got to think critically, look at the values underneath.
Okay, so passing on knowledge is one part. But the other big piece is learning when things go wrong. Learning from mistakes.
Absolutely crucial. The source talks about vicarious learning, basically, watching someone else mess up and thinking, okay, note to self, don't do that.
We all do that, or try to.
We try, but then it scales up to the societal level. Can we as a group see our collective blunders not just as failures, but as chances to grow?
Like in education, creating safe spaces to fail.
Ideally, yes. Safe spaces for trial and error. And the source really emphasizes that corrective side, a society's ability to actually look in the mirror and face up to its past failings.
Which loops us right back to that intergenerational compact, that unspoken deal, driven, really, by wanting life to be less painful, maybe. Better, anyway, for the next ones.
And you see it everywhere. Parenting, education, long-term planning.
Infrastructure projects that take decades.
Exactly. It's about transferring knowledge, skills, values, sure, but also hopes, aspirations, a vision for what could be.
But it's tricky. The source points out this tension.
Always a tension between preserving tradition, the wisdom of the past.
And innovating, changing, fixing the old mistakes.
Right. Balancing that respect for the past with the demands of the future. Finding that sweet spot, that's the key.
Okay, so this isn't some new idea we just cooked up. How has this actually played out through history, across different cultures?
Well, the source takes us way back, ancient civilizations. As societies got bigger, more complex.
Less informal learning, more structure.
Exactly. You see formal education starting. Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, they had the aduba. Basically, schools for scribes.
Teaching reading, writing, math.
Administration skills. Stuff you need to run a state.
Right. Going beyond just learning by watching. And it wasn't only practical skills, was it? Rome, for example.
Rome's a great case. Big emphasis on moral, civic education, reverence for the gods, respect for law, obedience.
Stuff learned in the family, but also reinforced. Laws, stories.
The law of the tools tables, stories about heroes, all shaping what it meant to be Roman.
And then you get contrasts, like in Greece, Sparta versus Athens.
Yeah, Sparta's ojal, super rigorous, state-run training, military, moral, obedience focus.
Very different from Athens.
Very. Athens was more about liberal arts, philosophy, rhetoric, cultivating the individual intellect and virtue, mostly through private education.
Now, this is really fascinating. The Han Dynasty in China.
Ah, yes. After the Qin Dynasty collapsed.
The Han leadership apparently looked hard at why it collapsed, and they deliberately tried to learn from those mistakes.
They invested heavily in educating future leaders, officials, trying to ensure wiser governance. That's a very direct example of societal learning from a massive failure.
It really is. And even the Indus Valley, passing down craft skills, valuing peace, it all points to this deliberate effort. Makes you wonder, could AI today look back at the Qin data and pinpoint those weaknesses even faster?
That's a really interesting thought experiment. What could an AI see that they couldn't?
Yeah. But the point is, across these ancient societies, you see this pattern. Intentional preparation, passing on values, often shaped by reflecting on the past successes and failures.
Definitely. Now let's shift gears a bit. Indigenous knowledge systems offer a really different, but just as profound perspective.
Right. Often relying more on oral traditions, storytelling, rituals.
And that vital role of elders, the wisdom keepers, living libraries, in a sense.
And tech, traditional ecological knowledge, which we mentioned, it's not just about survival skills.
No, it's deeply tied to sustainability, community resilience, cultural identity, spirituality. Some tech practices have demonstrably managed environments better long-term than some more modern approaches.
There's that emphasis on interconnectedness. People, land, spirit.
Deeply interconnected. And the source makes a crucial, sobering point about colonization disrupting these systems.
A huge loss of wisdom.
A massive loss, and arguably a failure by the colonizers to learn from these incredibly resilient, long-lasting models of intergenerational living.
Okay, then there are things like apprenticeships and rites of passage.
Yeah.
More structured ways to pass things on.
Apprenticeship, learning a trade by doing, alongside a master. It's ancient, and it was essential for specialized skills.
And rites of passage.
Those ceremonies marking life stages, often involving multiple generations, sharing stories, sacred knowledge, maybe tests.
They affirm new roles, new responsibilities.
And strengthen community bonds, shared values. Both apprenticeship and rites of passage basically embed past lessons into training or ritual. They institutionalize preparation.
And we can't forget belief systems, philosophies.
Huge influence. Plato, pushing education for virtue, religious traditions shaping parenting, morals.
Historical stories, epics, myths, transmitting cultural memory, lessons from ancestors.
Even ancient laws, like Hammurabi's Code. They were often direct responses to past problems, corruption, disputes, trying to bake the lesson into the system for the future.
So belief systems gave the why and the what, often based on looking back.
Exactly. And think about how the methods changed oral to written. That impacts who gets the knowledge, how it's interpreted.
And the societies that really reflected on failures, like the Han.
They often seem more adaptable, more resilient, which suggests this whole process isn't just cultural fluff, it's got deeper roots.
Let's get into those roots. Evolutionary, biological, cognitive.
From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes a ton of sense. Intergenerational learning lets us build this massive pool of collective knowledge.
Way beyond what one person could figure out alone.
Exactly. Pool knowledge about the environment, tools, cooperation, and crucially, avoiding dangers others already encountered. Societies that did this well just had a better shot at survival.
It feels intuitive. Why repeat a lethal mistake if the lesson's already there? The source also brings up biology, even genetics. Epigenetics.
Yeah, this is wild. Epigenetic inheritance, the idea that experiences, especially intense ones like trauma, might change how our genes work, gene expression, and that those changes could potentially be passed down.
Seriously, like inherited memory.
Sort of. Animal studies show things like fear responses being transmitted. Human studies are looking at links between ancestral trauma and descendants being more vulnerable to anxiety, PTSD. It's like a biological echo of past negative events.
Wow.
Yeah.
Heavy.
It is. The source also touches on the more speculative idea of genetic memory, like a species-level readiness based on long-term ancestral stuff. But epigenetics is where there's more active research.
So the past could be shaping us biologically, even unconsciously.
Yeah.
Okay, what about our minds? Cognition, psychology, future thinking is key, right?
Absolutely. That human capacity to think ahead, plan, anticipate consequences. Piaget called it formal operational thought develops in adolescence, lets us reason abstractly about what-ifs.
And Erickson's idea of generativity.
Right. That pops up in middle adulthood for many, that concern for guiding the next generation, wanting to leave something positive behind. That's a huge psychological engine driving this whole intergenerational compact.
That really resonates. Wanting to contribute.
Yeah.
And empathy, morality, they fit in here too.
Definitely. Understanding others' feelings, knowing right from wrong, that forms the basis for feeling responsible towards future people. Not just handing down facts, but cultivating their ability to think critically, feel empathy, be resilient, so they can learn effectively.
And learning about this importance of preparation is itself developmental.
Yeah, starts early with values, then abstract thought kicks in, then later that generative motivation, it unfolds over a lifetime.
Okay, solid groundwork. Now, the impact. How does this learning or not learning actually shape our lives?
What?
Individually, societally, the impact matrix.
That's all tangled together, isn't it? Individually, strong intergenerational bonds. They boost well-being, mental health, real social support, passing on coping skills.
And the emotions around learning matter hugely. Success feels good, fuels more learning.
Failure, especially with shame attached, that can shut things down quick, which is why that safe space to fail idea is so important.
Makes sense. And identity, morals, spirituality.
Knowing your roots, the stories of your people that shapes who you are, your moral compass. Rituals reinforce that. Engaging with culture helps you think critically, understand history. It builds you as a person, a citizen.
But then there's the dark side. Trauma. The source says it breaks the compact.
That's a powerful way to put it. Trauma doesn't just hurt individuals. It sends ripples across generations, epigenetically, behaviorally. Childhood trauma messes with the very brain functions needed for learning. Intergenerational trauma keeps those wounds open, perpetuates harmful patterns.
So healing becomes essential, not just for the individual, but for the future.
Absolutely critical. And we can't forget basic needs. If past mistakes mean future generations lack food, water, safety, forget thriving. Their potential is crushed from the start.
Okay, shifting to the bigger picture. Society. How does this shape culture, ethics, progress?
Well, culture is transmission. Family, peers, schools, media passing it all down. That gives continuity, but it's also how culture adapts, evolves. We learn, we critique, we change. Think about how gender roles have shifted over time.
Through that transmission and reevaluation.
Exactly. Effective transmission plus critical thinking leads to positive evolution, ideally.
And our ethics. That idea of intergenerational solidarity.
Our ethical sense develops through social learning. Shared values bridge generational gaps. That solidarity, feeling connected, responsible for the future, it's vital for tackling big global problems. Climate change, for example.
Trying not to repeat past mistakes becomes an ethical stance.
It absolutely is, and our ethical frameworks aren't fixed. They evolve as we reflect on the consequences of past actions over time.
So when we get it right, when the learning works, what does that look like societally?
You see links to progress, innovation often tied to well-prepared leadership that learned from the past. Strong community ties foster cohesion, resilience. Sustainable resource management becomes a priority that's inherently intergenerational.
Wealth, education, those get passed down too, shaping opportunities.
For better or worse, societal structures themselves kind of encode past lessons or mistakes. Solidarity is both a cause and effect of learning from errors. When we fail to learn, trust breaks down.
Which brings us to what happens when we don't learn, the shadow of unlearned lessons.
Yeah, this is the worrying part. Stagnation. Repeating history. Sometimes collapse.
History is full of examples, sadly. Military blunders repeated. Economic crises that echo past ones.
It's like, didn't we learn anything from the Great Depression when the 2008 crisis hit? Sometimes it feels like the compact is broken.
Is it just forgetting? Or are there deeper reasons we fail to learn?
Oh, it's much deeper. The source points to a whole mess of barriers. Psychological ones like cognitive biases.
Confirmation bias, only seeing what we already believe.
Right. Hindsight bias, oh, it was obvious all along. Self-serving bias, even the truth effect, hear something often enough, you start believing it, true or not.
And emotional barriers, fear of admitting mistakes.
Definitely. Fear of failure. Maybe a hidden curriculum in organizations that punishes speaking up. Plus, huge societal factors.
Like what?
Poverty, poor education access, breakdown of community spaces, tech disruption, economic stress, political polarization, all making it harder to have shared understanding, shared learning from the past.
And the consequences of not learning.
Can be dire. Ignoring financial bubble lessons leads to instability. Organizations stuck in flawed thinking fail. Worst case, failure to adapt to big challenges environment, inequality leads to collapse, losing the ability to meet basic needs.
Those biases, like the truth effect, create echo chambers. Makes it hard to see history clearly.
And short-term pressures always seem to incentivize ignoring the long-term lessons.
Okay, that's pretty bleak. But the source introduces a potential wild card: artificial intelligence, AI, as a new lens.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. AI as an analytical tool. Imagine AI crunching vast historical data, finding patterns of success or failure too complex for us to spot easily.
Quantifying the impact of past actions, more evidence-based decisions.
Potentially. But here's the twist. AI itself is becoming part of the intergenerational context. It's shaping how we think, interact, so understanding AI's own impact is now part of preparing for the future.
Could AI help us overcome our own biases?
That's the hope. AI might spot biases in our narratives or decisions, a sort of cognitive corrective. Sentiment analysis could maybe even get at the emotions behind past events.
Okay, that's analysis. What about AI helping us learn as an augmentative tool?
Big potential here. Personalized learning tailored to each person's needs, helping them grasp history, consequences at their own speed.
Transforming history class, making it more interactive.
Could be. AI simplifying research, generating ideas, maybe even simulating talks with historical figures. Imagine that for engagement. Though accuracy and bias in the AI itself are huge caveats.
Of course. And fostering critical thinking, ethical reasoning.
AI could present dilemmas, offer feedback, prompt discussion, but the goal has to be developing our judgment, not just getting answers from the machine. AI as a Socratic guide, maybe?
What about bridging communication gaps between generations?
That's a neat idea. AI translating complex stuff, helping different age groups understand each other's references or styles, maybe even empathy-building simulations. Carefully curated, of course.
Ultimately, it's about well-being, right?
Right.
Can AI help there? Personalized support, resilience.
Potentially. AI chatbots for mental health support, coping strategies making help more accessible. That enhances our capacity to learn constructively. AI life coaching platforms, helping develop skills like critical thinking, emotional intelligence.
Skills needed to understand society, learn from mistakes.
Exactly. And maybe the most far-out idea, AI simulating long-term consequences of our actions today, making the future feel more real, maybe fostering more empathy for future generations.
Using AI to strengthen that intergenerational compact. Fascinating. And strategic foresight. Planning.
AI could be huge here. Analyzing trends, generating diverse future scenarios way faster than humans alone. Scenarios where we repeat mistakes, scenarios where we avoid them.
Helping policymakers see long-term impacts of decisions. Climate, resources.
Making abstract future threats more concrete. And it's a big, but it has to be human-AI collaboration. AI spots patterns, humans bring intuition, ethics. Transparency in the AI is non-negotiable for trust.
This has been, wow, a really deep dive. So, summing up, we've looked at this core human drive, learn from the past for a better future.
How it's shown up across history, cultures, its roots and evolution, biology, our minds.
The huge impact when we succeed or fail at it. And now this whole new layer with AI, the potential, the risks, the ethics.
It really ties together, doesn't it? Ancient scribes, indigenous wisdom keepers, modern AI, all part of this continuous human story, trying to learn, adapt, pass on something better.
So for you listening, here's something to mull over. Thinking about all this, what past mistakes feel more real to you now? And what steps, even tiny ones, could you take in your own life to contribute to that better future we talked about?
How might the history, the ethics we discussed, shape your choices in a world that's changing so fast, especially with AI?
It's a lot to think about.
It is. And definitely don't stop here. Dig deeper into the history, the indigenous knowledge, the AI ethics. There's so much more out there.
Hopefully this deep dive got your curiosity going. Keep exploring.
This is DigitView.